Applied Human Biology, Unit 1, A3, the ventilation system and COPD. So in the lung structure, you have the larynx, which is another word for the voice box. These are cartilage rings which keep the airways open. Trachea is the main airway. Bronchus, or bronchi plural, there's two of them which branch off onto each lung. Bronchioles are the smaller tubes, and they end in tiny air sacs which are called alveoli, or singular alveolus. This is the diaphragm. 8 isn't really part of the breathing system. Heart. 9 is the right lung, because you've got to imagine that you are the diagram. 10 is the pleural membranes. 11 are the intercostal muscles. 12 is all this fluid that surrounds the lung, which is called pleural fluid. So if somebody gets pleurisy, it is that fluid that gets filled up with bacteria. 13 is the rib. Even more detail that you need to know at level 3 standard is you've got the internal intercostal muscles, which are the ones that are closest to the sternum or the breastbone, and the external intercostal muscles are the one on the outside. So the pathway to the alveoli goes through the nose or mouth, through the trachea, to the bronchi, through the bronchioles, to the alveoli, and then into the blood capillary. That would be the direction of oxygen transport. Obviously, carbon dioxide would go the other direction. Trachea is a large membranous tube reinforced by rings of cartilage, extending from the larynx to the bronchial tubes and conveying air to and from the lungs. The bronchi are two short branches located at the lower end of the trachea that carry air into the lungs. Bronchioles are the airways into the lungs that lead from the bronchi to the alveoli. Rings of cartilage help keep trachea open for the passage of air. Ciliated epithelial cells, which line the trachea and bronchi. Cells in the trachea have microscopic hairs on them, called cilia, which waft mucus up and out of the airways that may have bacteria trapped in. And then you can either cough that up or you can swallow it, and hopefully the hydrochloric acid would kill it in your stomach. Goblet cells is a column-shaped cell found in the trachea which secretes mucus. Bronchial walls composed of relatively thick layer of smooth muscle to constrict and control airflow into the alveoli. Alveoli are small air sacs found at the ends of the bronchioles. The alveoli are made from epithelial cells and are 1 cell thick. Between the alveoli there are collagen and elastic tissue. The elastic tissue will stretch during inspiration and recoil during expiration to expel air. Features of alveoli that adapt them to gas exchange. Numerous and highly folded, so they have a large surface area for increased diffusion of gases. The alveolus wall is 1 cell thick, made out of a squamous epithelium. These cells are thin and flat, meaning they provide a short diffusion distance for faster gas exchange. Vast network of blood capillaries. Circulation of the blood maintains a constant concentration gradient. Process of gas exchange at the alveoli. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood across the endothelium layer of the capillary, which is only 1 cell thick, across the squamous epithelium, which is in the lining of the alveoli, which is only 1 cell thick, and then into the alveolar airspace. And then the other way around, oxygen diffuses from the alveolar airspace across the squamous epithelium, across the endothelium lining of the capillary, and into the red blood cells to bind with haemoglobin. And this diffusion pathway is only 2 cells thick, because you've got 1 cell thick of the alveolar lining, the squamous epithelium, and 1 cell thick of the endothelium lining of the capillary. Ventilation or inspiration. So in inspiration, the external intercostal muscles contract. This brings the rib cage upwards and outwards. The diaphragm contracts and flattens. The volume of the thorax increases, and therefore pressure decreases to less than the external air pressure, and therefore air moves down its pressure gradient into the lungs. Note that inspiration requires energy from ATP for the muscle contraction of the external intercostal muscles. Expiration. The external intercostal muscles relax. The rib cage drops down and in. The diaphragm relaxes and goes back to its dome position. The volume of the thorax decreases. The pressure increases above atmospheric, and therefore air moves down its pressure gradient out of the lungs. Forced expiration. It's an active process which uses abdominal and internal intercostal muscles contract. So it's active because the internal intercostal muscles contract with forced expiration. COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Causes of COPD are smoking, pollution, chemical irritants, and genetic mutations. Emphysema is a lung disease marked by the loss of elasticity or loss of elastin and thinning of the lung tissue, which reduces the surface area. So you can see it's not as folded, and also the elasticity has lost as well. So there's a reduced surface area because there's less folding. Symptoms of emphysema are shortness of breath, wheezing, increased breathing rate in order to increase the amount of air containing oxygen reaching their lungs. Causes of bronchitis: any respiratory infection, smoking, air pollution or environmental hazards. Symptoms of bronchitis are heavy mucus discharge and persistent cough. Pulmonary fibrosis: the formation of scar tissue in the lung, resulting in decreased lung capacity and increased difficulty in breathing. This increases the diffusion pathway, therefore diffusion of oxygen into the blood is slower. Asthma: a chronic allergic disorder characterised by episodes of severe breathing difficulty, coughing and wheezing, because smooth muscle lining in the bronchioles contract and a large amount of mucus is produced, constriction of the airways making it really difficult to breathe. The airflow in and out of the lungs is severely reduced, so less oxygen enters the alveoli. Symptoms of COPD: history of progressive shortness of breath, excessive cough, sputum production. Patients with predominantly emphysematous COPD may have dry cough and weight loss. Risk factors of COPD are cigarette smoking, occupational chemicals and dust, air pollution, infection, hereditary, ageing, asbestos. Hope that helps.